Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Jessica. So Jessica, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jessica Lauria. I am currently living in Sydney, Australia, after being in New York City for 24 years and had a, amazing career in advertising and marketing. And now I've taken those skills and I've created a consultancy called Lauria Co., which is my last name. And Co stands for a few things, which is collect, connect, and collab. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, so I'm curious more about that, right? So like in terms of your business, what exactly you do and really how you got the idea to branch out and start this business.
Yeah, so a few things, starting with just in general, I've been running marketing departments at hypergrowth brands for, the past 10 years. I've been part of those teams, building those teams and, taking those skills and collabing with other brands or C-suite, especially startups. I find that startups mostly are the ones that are needing the help in a really urgent yet flexible way. And I've really been trying to meet people where they're at. So doing kind of that consulting work, I find is a need that people need. Again, they don't need every day. There's this like fractional CMO role that's been on the rise for the past few years. And so really seeing that need and filling that gap for some brands. So that's kind of the collab piece. I saw that there was a need. And then what I call collect is kind of a collective, right? Because sometimes I'm not enough and I need an amazing strategist or an amazing creative or an amazing social person, depending on the needs, and creating a mini collective, if you will, to address the needs of brands and clients. And then the third thing that I do, the connect, that need came from, after being on the agency side for 14 years and then going brand side, client side, I realized so many people on the client side don't know all the amazing talent and agencies that exist on that other side in that like creative space in the advertising industry. And what would happen is, so I was usually in brand marketing and doing brand stuff. And so let's just say the 50 people that I worked with at Chobani, they went to 50 new companies. And when they would get there, they would give me a call and they would say, oh, hey, Jess, we're doing we need an agency. Can you tell me the top 5 agencies right now? Or I need to redo my website. Who are the best design shops? And I would always know, because there's so much talent. So whether it was who's the best agency, who's the best person, and I would just connect people. And I did that for many, many years. And I realized, oh, wait, I think my network is kind of worth something. So I created this idea where, I can find a lid for every pot, because there is an agency for every brief. It's not one size fits all ever. And that was it became very clear to me that was an offering that people needed. And all my friends that are on that client side and that brand side, I think the other challenge is they need a partner that's right for them, not just their business. So one is, who's right for their business and their need, but what kind of person do they need? Do they need hand-holding, or are they, they're up to speed? They just need someone to set it and forget it model, because there is so much talent and there are so many brilliant, brilliant people in the creative space. And they also need a break too. And a lot of, especially smaller shops, they don't have these business development people always going out and trying to find business. So I found that there was a need on both sides, and really being that glue that makes that connection stick for people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's awesome. And it seems like you have a lot of experience, doing those things, working with different types of brands across lots of different verticals. So I'm curious if you can share maybe some of the verticals or even names of brands that you've worked with.
Yeah. So in my client side days, so obviously on the agency side was always amazing, because the best part on working on the agency is that you got to touch so many pieces of business. I started my career working on Visa, which was amazing, and that was also back in the day when it was, huge, huge advertising budgets, $2 to $3 million commercials. But then, when I started working at an agency called Anomaly really circled the business problem and they did everything. It wasn't just commercials. So you got really in the weeds and in depth of the business problem that the clients were having. So we did a lot of work with Coca-Cola, and I did a lot of work with Procter and Gamble and Diageo, and really working closely with their R&D departments. And they were kind of bringing new brands to life. And so being a part of that process, identifying, what this product should be, how it should be named, who's the consumer, and then bringing it to life with the whole, marketing communications. That whole process is incredible. It's about like a 9-month process. So I called it, these brand babies, and you would birth these brand babies, but you got to really see how it worked on the client side. And then I went to Chobani for 4 years, and that was just incredible. Again, hyper growth. What an amazing brand. The founder, Hamdi, is incredible and a true humanitarian, who's really trying to save the world one cup of yogurt at a time. And again, when you go that side, you realize that, it's not just about marketing. There's so much more. How are you supporting sales? How are you supporting operations? How are you making sure that, the entire business is connected and flowing? And again, realizing, my world marketing, how much that affects everybody else, right? You're not on an island. You're not just making a commercial or a piece of communication. There's so much more, and it impacts the entire company. And most recently, I was at GoPuff, which was incredible. What a time to be there. They had some of the most talented people I've ever worked with in my career in the building. You were really around, you were around amazing ex-Uber people. The entrepreneurial spirit was so high. And there we actually launched 4 new to the world brands. We launched a pizza brand called the Mean Tomato. We launched Good Eatin', which was a snack brand with Chris Paul, a vegan snack brand, which was awesome, plant-based. Delicious. I encourage you to go try it. It's now in supermarkets, actually. I think at Texas H-E-B. And then we also launched their private label business called Basically. So basically toilet paper, basically light bulbs, basically pretzels, like a very fun product line that has over, 300 SKUs. And we also did their OTC medicines as well, called Good Now. So those were incredible experiences. And again, you realize all the things you need to do to create something and bring it to life. And again, that's who I'm finding today, right now, needs the most help. The people that are in the building phase. And, they need to know, like, well, what do I need to be thinking about? What are the things that aren't even on my radar right now? And that's kind of all this experience has really helped me spread that knowledge onto other founders.
It's awesome. So I guess, like, obviously, as I mentioned, you've been in this space for some time, and I'm sure the industries have changed over the year or so. What has been some of like the biggest changes, and even like what are some like the biggest trends that you're seeing right now when it comes to brands, CPG or in retail, et cetera?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, this is not new news, but they talk about like the funnel is broken, right? There's not a traditional funnel anymore. It's not like you see something in the wild, and then you get served an ad, and then you go to the store. Social media and the digital space has just blown everything up. And I think it's such a confusing landscape today because there are so many ways to talk to people and what's the right way. And there's a lot of buzzwords, and brands are like, well, should I be doing an affiliate program? Should I be using influencers? What should I be doing in social? I want to go viral, all these things that, again, it's not right for every brand. So I think it's just so confusing. And I think also success is very hindsight. There's so much success hindsight. So if someone has success, and they go, what did they do? And, you see on LinkedIn, everybody's trying to break down, this is the funnel that this brand did, and this is what these guys did. And I broke it down. And just because that worked for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Yes, there are principles, but I think it's so overwhelming for smaller brands today to say, how do I get there, and how do I get the success? And I think the other thing that is a good reminder is talking about a lot of this stuff doesn't happen overnight. So, I just saw this post about Aviator Nation, and she was doing it for 10 years. Like, people are doing things for many, many years before it finally catches on. But we live in this world where we want immediate success, immediate sales. But to answer your question, I just think that the amount of ways to connect with consumers is so overwhelming. In addition to the amount of tools that are at our disposal is almost, it's crippling, right? It used to just be like, oh, let me just look at the data, but now the data can come from 20 different sources. If you look at someone's tech stack for a website, it's crazy. And you can get all this data, but if you don't know how to use the data or have the time to look at the data, again, it just adds to that feeling of being very overwhelmed. And where do I go and who are the right people to kind of put me on the path?
Yeah, I think that is a good point, and there's so much noise in this space, and it's hard to know exactly like what's right for your brand. And to your point, right? Like what's right for one brand might not be right for your brand. So how do you really figure that out? You're really just testing all these different things, you're trying one strategy and doing something else. Like, what do you kind of see in terms of like, especially for early stage companies, how they can figure out what's the best way for them to try something out and see if that method is a good fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there are some best practices, right, and categories, and I think, again, one of my favorite people in the world is Nick Sharma. I know him personally. He's just a legend, but he gives all his secrets away, right? Like he says, there are no secrets. This is what you should do. And though the things he puts out are very good for specific categories, right? Like, and so I do think people should look at category best practices when they're thinking about what they should do. But people really need to think about, what kind of brand do I want to be? Am I a lifestyle brand? Therefore, how does a lifestyle brand behave? Do I want to be a subscription model? Where do you fit in? What kind of category do you want to be? How do you want to be perceived? Because that's also then how you act, right? Like if you want to be this like super cool brand, you got to act in a certain way versus a brand that might be more of an everyday moment. But to answer, what was your question again? Your specific
Yeah,
question was,
yeah. I mean, just because like there's so many brands out there that are getting started, every week or every day, right? And
yeah,
I think there's so much noise in terms of, strategies, whether it's direct
right.
to consumer, and even if you're going that route, like whether it's TikTok shop, whether it's Meta, whether, retail is the best play. It's like, I think just, because you were talking about, and I agree, I think that there's so much noise and it's so challenging. I think that brands probably, often fail because they just are doing too many things at once, right? So it's like, how do
Mhm.
you figure out, what's right for your brand? Is it really just more of that testing of these different things? Doing,
Yeah.
let's just say, Meta ads for a few months, then maybe switching over to TikTok, and yeah, I guess like just from, what have you seen from like a marketing and branding
Yeah.
perspective?
I think the most important thing to figure out is, who is your target and what is the need that you are providing? And then from there, okay, well, what does that mean and what's the best place? Obviously, I feel like Meta's, the necessary evil, right? I don't think you can escape not being on Meta, but, there's way more efficiencies in other channels. I do think TikTok is a great place to be testing and learning and exploring, even things like getting on Reddit or going deep. I do think people need to try to challenge the norms. While you have to be on Meta and do a lot of testing on Meta, I do think, the A/B testing, what's working, trying different things too. Like we're in this day and age of like, what's the hook? How are you getting in? And let's just say you think you know your audience. Try a few different variations and see if you're getting other people, different people. Again, you don't have to spend a ton of money up front. I think you can like piece it out, see what you get before you kind of dive all in. But I do think looking at other channels is really interesting. I think it's like, what, 70% should be traditional, 20% should kind of be like new, and then that last 10% just like go crazy, try it. I'm talking about your media budget, that is, take that
Mhm.
10% and just try crazy things, because you just don't know what's going to hit. And again, like I said, everyone looks at these successes, but trust me, no one goes in going, this is going to be the thing. This is going to
Right.
be the winner. It's easy to say after, oh, of course they did this super unique thing that they tried. They didn't know that until they tried it.
Right.
So have just like a little bit of money, not a lot of money, to really just try something different. And again, if you think about that audience and their need, how do you show up in a way that would be different than every other message that they're getting? Because everyone's getting served on Meta.
Right.
What other things have we not thought about or talked about? And this is where I think partnerships become really interesting, or, working with, again, people are working with creators and influencers in a really interesting way. But again, what's going to be right for your need and for your audience?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many options. And I guess, I'm curious as well, right, for your business, because as you mentioned, you recently moved to Sydney. You were in the US for a while. Or, I mean, and most of your, clients and contacts, I think, are still back in the States. So are you looking to also kind of expand your business locally where you live, or are you really just heavily focused on the US market for 2025?
I mean, my whole network is mainly the US, and the time difference actually hasn't been a problem. I just wake up on the early side and helping those brands. A lot of them are in California as well, which makes it even easier. But I just think growing that, and then in Australia, there are, it's a much smaller market here, but there's some amazing brands here. A lot of entrepreneurship is happening here. And so how do you help brands launch in the States? I think you realize this country's what, 25 million people or 26 million people. So, that's almost the size, it's like New York State, it's not that big. And so you see some of these amazing brands and amazing products helping them get to the States and just grow their reach. And so I think that's a really big gap that I can help fill. And if nothing else, either I'm helping them or connecting them with the right people for their growth and understanding. Because I do think the States, the audiences are way more nuanced. You've got so many when it comes to the target and audience segmentation. There's just so much more to consider, even location wise. Like someone in New York is different from someone in Texas, is different from someone in Colorado. And, those nuances people don't really fully understand. But, when you're in the States, obviously you kind of know there's a bit more there.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's interesting. Yeah, we have some Australian clients as well. And I think, as always, like to your point, I mean, there are more people in Texas where I live than the whole country of Australia. So I know people are always looking to expand into the US when they're in a smaller country like Australia. So I guess like you've been doing this for some time in CPG and operation and brand management. So if you could go back in time to before you started on your career, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
That I wish I knew. Well, I'll tell you the best piece of advice someone gave me halfway through my career that changed everything for me. Because when I first started, I thought I had to be like very professional and buttoned up, and I was very, very astute. And I was writing an email that was like a recap or something. It was a very important email after a very important meeting, and I shared it with my boss, and I said, can you just like read over this email because I know how important it is? And she said, yeah, of course. And she reads it and she just looks at me and she says, why are you trying to sound so smart? And I said, oh, I have a little baby here. Hold on, Zoe, I'm just on the call. Why are you up so early? Okay, I'll start over. Hold on.
Yeah.
So I have this very important email that I've written that's a very important recap from a big meeting. And I give it to my boss. I said, can you please read this? It's so important. And she reads it over and she looks at me and she says, why are you trying to sound so smart? And I said, what do you mean? This is like an important email. She goes, but why are you trying to sound so smart? Just say what you mean. And I said, what? She's like, just say what you mean. And it blew my mind. And it was that moment that I realized clarity on anything is way more important than trying to sound smart. And it changed my style. It changed my leadership style. It changed how I dealt with people. I was like, you're right. Why? And then I also realized as part of that, in certain roles, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. That's not my role. And every meeting I go into, I go, what is my role in this meeting? Am I leading this meeting? Am I supposed to be the smartest person in this meeting? Am I supposed to get the best out of everybody in this meeting? Am I supposed to come to a conclusion in this meeting? And that just changed everything, because then I was like, oh, it's just about what is my role here? And that clarity is the most important thing, because with clarity, everybody can move forward and be successful. And it's not about my ego. It's not about me sounding smart. And I realized that, probably halfway through my career, and it really changed the game. And I think for people, coming up and coming in, it's like just remembering that. And it's okay to just be transparent and honest, and that will get you way farther than just trying to sound smart and thinking about the next thing I'm going to say that's going to sound super smart.
That's awesome. That's really good advice. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you or wanted to work with you, what's the best way for somebody to find you and get in contact?
LinkedIn's the best. I find LinkedIn is just, where all kind of the business connections happen. And I try to keep my LinkedIn pretty clean, meaning I don't just accept an invite. I'd like to know that I know that person, because what happens is people will come to me and go, hey, can you connect me with so and so? You're connected on LinkedIn. And I feel like a real ass when I go, oh, I don't really know them. And it's like, well, why are you
Mhm.
connected to them? So I like to at least have some, even a conversation, like, and
Right.
I tend to say, hey, let's have a chat so I can at least say I know you. I know what
Right.
your offering is, because that's the other thing too. I'm always wanting to know who is out there, who's great, because like I said, lid for every pot, it's all being connected to people is just the way that the world churns, and it's only helpful. So I love knowing what people are doing, what they're up to, what their offerings are. So when someone comes to me, I go, oh, actually, I know the perfect person for you, or maybe we will work together in some capacity.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. That's really good advice. And yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.